Why corruption always breeds tyranny. When you see this kind of stuff happening, you know that what is being set up is a dictatorship. And that is the direction that we are moving right now if things don't change and change big and change quickly. So what's absolutely verifiably, factually true is that dictators are corrupt. The dictators are always corrupt. Excuse me. But this relationship between corruption and dictatorship is one that I think most Americans are really unaware of. We haven't had this experience in our own life until the second Trump administration, and arguably the first Trump administration. But now it's like he's just flaunting it, right? This guy's mother gives Trump $1 million. The guy gets a pardon so that he doesn't have to pay back, I think it was $4 million in fines for his tax cheating. He doesn't have to go to prison. Trump sells little digital pictures called meme coins that are not actually coins and have no value for billions of dollars. Some are suggesting that more than half of his total net worth right now is the result of crypto, and his kids are in it, and he's in it, and everybody's making money. And so here's the point of this article, is that if you're going to defy public opinion while you're skimming money out of the public coffers or exploiting your role as leader for your own private gain, as Trump is doing, you must intimidate your opposition, your political opposition, and the press so that they stop pointing out your crimes. In other words, dictators being corrupt can start in one of two ways. Either a dictator seizes power and starts, grabbing everything in sight, or a democratically elected leader seizes power through an election, as Putin did, as Orban did, as Erdogan did, and then they become corrupt, or they were always corrupt, but the corruption comes with them into office, and they begin passing out favors to friends, they begin passing out punishments to enemies, they begin figuring out ways to monetize their role as the leader of the state, as the head of the state. And then when people start calling them out, keep in mind, Alexei Navalny, what did he have that Putin hated so much? He led a foundation, a nonprofit foundation. And by the way, Putin went after it by declaring that its tax-exempt status was gone. This is what Trump is trying to do right now. He's got an executive order giving himself the power to strip any organization of their nonprofit status. Remember, he threatened Harvard with this last week? I mean, that executive order is tied up in court right now, but this is what he wants to do. So Putin did the same thing with Alexei Navalny's Institute Against Public Corruption, or whatever the name of it was. It was something like that. And it was Navalny's crusading against corruption that, on the one hand, made Navalny famous and popular across Russia. People loved it and loved him for it. And that made Putin, that kind of pushed Putin into a corner where he had to basically start using the tools of dictatorship to shut down the press that was amplifying Navalny's message. So it's not just that dictators become corrupt. It's that corrupt people, when they have positions of power, inevitably will try to become dictators, because that's how they protect themselves and their corruption. That's how they keep the scam going. That's how they keep stealing from the public purse. That's how they keep running scams on the people. That's how they keep extorting or extracting wealth from the very, very wealthy people in the society. Trump having all these CEOs show up at his inauguration and give him $1 million each. This is just naked public corruption, openly, right out there in front of the world. And by the way, it's not just domestic. I mean, Trump goes to the Middle East. He goes to 3 very corrupt countries. Each one of them gives him $1 billion plus real estate deal. And in exchange for that, he gives them American weapons. I mean, this is just naked corruption. The Trump family walks away with literally billions of dollars. And now we're destabilizing the Middle East by pouring high-tech weapon systems into these three countries, which, by the way, were at each other's throats just 5 years ago. Remember, the UAE and Saudi Arabia put an embargo on Qatar? They cut off the supply of food and fuel to people in Qatar. It was a big deal. But now the president, or the emir of whatever his title is of Qatar, the dictator of Qatar, gives Trump, who, by the way, is a big supporter of Hamas, the biggest financial, political, and physical supporter of Hamas in the world is Qatar. Hamas's headquarters are in Qatar, in Doha. This is where all the guys who are running Hamas live. So Trump goes over there and says, hey, give me a $400 million airplane and I'll give you anything you want. I mean, I've seen this over and over again. I have lived and worked in countries where this was the case. In Uganda under Idi Amin, in Haiti under Papa Doc, or Baby Doc actually when I was there, under the Philippines when Ferdy Marcos was in charge, in Thailand during the military coup, in Colombia when the bombings were happening. I had a bomb go off 3 blocks from where I was staying. In Peru when Fujimori was running the country. In Russia. In South Sudan, where Trump is now dumping people. I spent a fair amount of time with Salva Kiir, the now president of South Sudan, who at the time was an anti-corruption campaigner, but not so much anymore. China in the 1980s. I've been in a bunch of these countries where I've seen this play out. And in every case, every single one of these countries, the media was cowed. The courts were run by loyal sycophants who were, loyal to dear leader. The police were largely unaccountable to the people. The kleptocrats were shoveling fortunes into offshore banks or British and American real estate. We are one of, by the way, only 2 countries, developed countries in the world, where anonymous entities can own real estate, which is why so much of the Trump real estate empire is based on shell corporations. This is all most, I can't say for sure that all of Trump's shell companies are money laundering operations or the ones that are buying into Trump properties, but that's typically how it's done. Odds are pretty high. So this is how politicians in functioning democracies, like Russia was at one time, like Hungary was at one time, like Egypt was at one time, like Turkey was at one time, like Thailand was at one time. This is how leaders in these functioning democracies become dictators. At first, when the leader takes over, things seem kind of normal. Although there's a zeal for reforms. We need reforms, like, let's replace government functions with private contractors, or let's appoint totally unqualified toadies to important positions. And let's change the election laws to make it easier for wealthy people to vote and harder for poor people to vote. These reforms, which we're seeing right now in America, should be the early warnings that dictatorship is imminent. Next, after that, come the complaints about the fake news and the enemies within the government and activist judges. This is the second major warning that a democratically elected leader is about to become a dictator or is on the path to becoming a dictator. And once the public is inured to these signals, the next step is for the leader to actively convert his position of political power into cash for himself and his family. Remember Uday and Qusay Hussein? And the oligarchs that he's brought into his circle of power. And here's Trump with 13 billionaires in his cabinet. Many of them completely unqualified to be there, putting completely unqualified people in charge of the Department of Homeland Security, in charge of the Pentagon, and he's got a reality TV star running the FAA at the same time that we've got airplanes falling out of the sky. I mean, this is crazy. We've got a Secretary of Homeland Security who doesn't know what habeas corpus is. We got a Secretary of State who refuses to call Putin a war criminal. We got a Secretary of Education who's a billionaire wrestling promoter. The lead negotiator for Trump with Ukraine is a real estate billionaire who has no experience in diplomacy. Our Secretary of Transportation, a reality TV star. Our Secretary of Health is a conspiracy nut lawyer with no training in medicine. Our EPA administrator is a former congressman with deep ties to the fossil fuel industry. Our Secretary of the Interior is heavily invested in fossil fuels. Our U.S. Attorney for New Jersey is a former parking garage lawyer. I mean, when you see this kind of stuff happening, you know that what is being set up is a dictatorship. And that is the direction that we are moving right now if things don't change and change big and change quickly.